Smallpox has been around for centuries, dating back to 1570 BC in Egypt, where mummies containing the familiar-looking skin lesions have been found. In 430 BC, there was the devastating plague of Athens, during which historians account the millions of casualties to the smallpox virus. Later on, the disease spread throughout Europe, Africa as well as Asia, wreaking havoc wherever it went. Luckily for us today, smallpox has been completely eradicated. This was possible due to the efforts of the World Health Organization that launched a global immunization campaign in 1967 with the goal of wiping out smallpox once and for all. In just one decade, the death rates went from 2 million people a year to 0.
But what exactly is smallpox? Smallpox is an acute contagious disease caused by the varroa virus, which is a member of the genus Orthopoxvirus and in the Poxviridae family. Varroa is a very large virus, approximately 200 to 400 nanometers long, and has a very complex life cycle. It is brick-shaped and has a barrier layer that steals from a host cell. The core of this virus is often described as dumbbell-shaped, meaning the middle of the core is narrower than the ends. The core contains the viral double-stranded DNA and proteins needed to help uncoat the virus core and to replicate the virus. This virus specifically infects humans, due to its ability to evade the host immune responses and avoid complement activation. The varroa virus can survive mainly by evading the immune response through several virulence factors. Smallpox has been studied to have a complement regulatory protein, CRP. The CRP acts as a cofactor for the serine protease factor, which inactivates the complement system, thereby protecting the host cell in which it resides from being hit by the complement-mediated attack. Also, the ability of the virus to fuse out from the host cell using fusion proteins as a virulence factor is harmful to the host cells, rendering them to be exposed to the extracellular material and promote degradation of the cell. There are two forms of the varroa virus: varroa major, the little strain, and varroa minor, the mild strain, also known as alistrism. As implied by the names, varroa major is more likely to cause serious disease and death than varroa minor. Unfortunately, varroa major was much more common than varroa minor. Surviving infection from either strain provides cross-immunity, thereby enabling us to have immunity to both varroa major and minor. The initial step in infecting an individual is the attachment of the virus to the host cell. Varroa usually enters through the respiratory tract. It attaches to the mouth, trachea, or lung mucosa. The cells comprising of the mucous membrane are not tightly packed, therefore allowing it to penetrate and move into the saliva. Once the virus reaches the cell membrane, it is brought in through endocytosis. Once in the host cell, the core protein is released. Varroa replicates in the cytoplasm of the host cell. DNA replication and transcription can start immediately because the virus itself contains enzymes for replication and transcription, not relying on host cell enzymes to initiate replication. First, the DNA and RNA polymerase are made, along with other transcription factors. Then the proteins which form the virion structure, various immunosuppressive proteins, and proteins that bind to certain molecules of the immune system are made. The proteins that bind to immune molecules are either secreted or bound to the infected cell's membrane. The enzymes, which are to be carried in the newly synthesized virion, are also created. The virion then exits the host cell through fusion of the host cell membrane. It is thought that host cell death occurs as a result of having excessive amounts of viral mRNA, which reduces the ability of the host cell in conducting its own transcription and production of normal proteins. So how is smallpox transmitted? Smallpox patients become contagious once the first sores appear in their mouth and throat. This is known as the early rash stage and lasts about 4 days. At this time, the person is most contagious. A rash starts as small red spots on the tongue and in the mouth. These spots change into sores that break open and spread large amounts of the virus into the mouth and throat. The person then starts to develop a fever. Once the sores in the mouth start breaking down, a rash appears on the skin, starting on the face and spreading to the arms and legs, and then to the hands and feet. Usually, it spreads to all parts of the body within 24 hours. As this rash appears, the fever begins to decline and the person may start to feel better. By the 4th day, the skin sores fill with a thick, opaque liquid and often have a dent in the center. Once the skin sores fill with fluid, the fever may rise again and remain high until scabs form over the bumps. The scabs and the fluid found in the patient's sores also contain the varroa virus. The virus starts spreading in the lungs. From there, it evades the bloodstream and spreads to the skin, intestines, lungs, kidneys, and brain. It takes between 7 and 17 days from the moment of exposure to the virus until signs and symptoms of the disease appear, and only becomes infectious once the fever develops. A distinctive rash appears 2 to 3 days later. Varroa virus is most frequently transmitted from an infectious person through direct deposition of large infective airborne droplets of saliva onto the nasal, oral, or pharyngeal mucosal membranes during close face-to-face contact with a susceptible individual. They spread the virus when they cough or sneeze as droplets from their nose or mouth spread to other people. Physical contact with a smallpox pustule or crusted scab, as well as direct contact with infected bodily fluids or through the objects contaminated by infected patients, such as bedding or clothing, may also transmit the virus. Virus particles can remain on such items for up to 1 week. Therefore, people who care for smallpox patients and wash their bedding or clothing have to wear gloves and take care to not get infected. Patients remain contagious until their last smallpox scab fall off, but the virus has been found to survive in scabs for many years. However, encased in this form, it is not considered to represent a significant infectious risk. Those survivors of smallpox often have severely deformed skin from the pustules. The generation of infectious fine particles aerosols provides a possible, although less common, means of smallpox transmission. This may result in the infection of people involved in non-face-to-face contact with the case, with the virus carried in aerosols spread by drafts and air conditioning systems. Though it is rare for smallpox to be spread through the air in enclosed settings, such as a building, it is unlikely for the varroa virus to survive on its own for more than 48 hours when exposed to normal environmental conditions, such as in ambient temperature, usual humidity, and sunlight. Did you know that smallpox can only be spread by humans? Apparently, scientists have no evidence that smallpox can be spread by insects or animals. No animal reservoirs or insect vectors, which are insects that spread a disease, exist. And no carrier state, which is the period when the virus is in the body, but the person is not actively sick, occurs. Thus, as long as all humans are vaccinated against the virus, smallpox could be controlled and effectively vaccinated. What is the treatment for smallpox? As of now, no known treatment is effective for smallpox. Medical management of smallpox is mainly supportive. For example, the patient should be isolated until all scabs have fallen off, about 3 to 4 weeks after rash onset, to prevent transmission of the varroa virus. The fluid and electrolyte balance should be monitored and maintained to avoid dehydration. Medication should be given for fever and pain. Skincare should be instituted, and unless the diagnosis of smallpox is confirmed in laboratory, patients should receive smallpox vaccination if they will be isolated with other patients with confirmed or suspected smallpox to prevent accidental transmission. One of the best ways to prevent smallpox is through vaccination. Vaccines given to individuals before exposure to smallpox can completely protect them. Vaccination within 3 days after exposure prevents or greatly lessens the severity of smallpox in most people. If vaccinated after 4 to 7 days of exposure, this likely offers some protection from disease or may decrease the severity of disease. Unfortunately, vaccination does not protect patients with smallpox who have already developed a rash. Cross-protective immunity from vaccinia is most effective during the first 10 years after vaccination and slowly wanes thereafter. People who have been vaccinated several times are likely to have longer-lasting immunity of unclear duration. Vaccinated persons normally exhibit an accelerated immune response. Thus, whenever possible, assigning those who have previously been vaccinated to duties involving close patient contact is advisable. People with known or possible exposure to smallpox should be vaccinated if the exposure has occurred within 3 days, unless the patient has a specific condition where the risks of immunization are considered even greater than contracting smallpox. For example, pregnant women who receive the smallpox vaccine are at risk of fetal vaccinia, which usually results in stillbirth or death of the infant. Therefore, women are advised against becoming pregnant for 4 weeks after smallpox vaccination. Vaccinia immunoglobulin, VIG, which is an isotonic sterile solution of the immunoglobulin fraction of plasma from people vaccinated with vaccinia vaccine, is the only drug available for improvement of some vaccinia-related complications. VIG is available only from the Centers for Disease Control. It is effective for treatment of certain cases of progressive vaccinia, but does not appear to offer a survival benefit when given to patients during the incubation or active disease stages of smallpox. However, new drugs are under investigation. For example, cidofovir may be beneficial if given in the early stages of illness, although the effectiveness of this treatment has not been proven in humans. Cidofovir is currently approved for the treatment of other infections, but not for smallpox. Having said that, animal models do support the potential usefulness of this agent in smallpox. Given immediately after exposure, cidofovir has shown some benefit in the prevention of vaccinia, monkeypox, and cowpox. The anti-vaccination movement begins with smallpox variolation. The first anti-vaccinist, Dr. Benjamin Moseley, inoculates people against smallpox, but is against Jenner's new smallpox vaccine. In the beginning, satirical print and pamphlets expressing concern against Jenner's vaccine appear from France to England. Claims are made that vaccination is nonsense before reason, a miserable illusion in a scientific point of view, and the greatest crime that has been committed in the last century. When the Vaccination Act of 1867 is passed, the Anti-Compulsory Vaccination League is formed. This movement spreads, and the Anti-Vaccination Society of America is founded just 2 years later. In Leicester, England, known as the stronghold of anti-vaccination, anti-vaccinists hold a demonstration march. The first connections are made, linking an increase in leprosy with smallpox vaccinations. Further claims that vaccinations don't prevent smallpox, but rather tend to increase it, by Dr. Reuben Clymer, heightened the movement especially against smallpox diseases. This cascades into a series of events attempting to link vaccinations with negative effects, such as seizures, neurological complications, and are made through publications, documentaries, and TV shows. In 1994, Andrew Wakefield publishes his study for measles vaccination as a risk factor for inflammatory bowel disease in Lancet, which would be equally as flawed as his later autism study due to biases and case ascertainment. An obvious common thread connects the anti-vaccination advocates from the Victorian age to the 21st century: germ theory denialism, alternative medical providers, the media, and most importantly, a fear of vaccine injury.